What's up, y'all? Welcome to Original Gamers Cast. I'm your host, Patrick Ryan, and as always, I am joined today by Nolan Brown.
Hello, everybody.
And Joel Watt.
Halo, friends.
A little pun there. Because this week we are going to be talking about Halo Combat Evolved. But before we get into that, like we do every week, how you guys doing?
Still playing Jack and Daxter.
Yeah.
Cool. It's good to know.
Nolan picked a good game last week. I'm still playing it too. I'm on the boss.
I haven't
beat it yet.
It's so much fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. It's been I got my glasses back, which is really cool being able to see.
Isn't it great?
Oh my god! Like, well, not only like because I have to have far vision glasses now,
Yeah.
which is actually not that bad because since I was a kid, for some reason I really wanted to have glasses, probably because my friend had them. I'm like, those are cool, and they said Nintendo on the side.
Nice.
Yes, those would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
So I got those in, and I got my new prescription for my reading glasses, so I can actually be able to focus a lot better on stuff. So I'm stoked about that.
Sweet.
And then I couldn't sleep, so last night I legit somewhere fell asleep about 7 a.m. today.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't know. It was bad. So I'm on all kinds of coffee right now. So
Not bad.
yeah. So this will be fun.
How about you, Joel?
Yeah, just been playing Jack and Daxter, going to work. Yeah. I don't know. My weeks have been uneventful lately.
That's not necessarily bad, right?
No, it's good.
Exactly.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm still playing Jack and Daxter. I'm on the boss. It's fun. I'm really glad that we picked it up. I can't believe I missed it because I never really had a PlayStation 2. But
yeah, me too.
But yeah, it's great. The bosses, he killed me like 4 or 5 times the last time I tried it, and I was like, well, I gotta quit doing this and clear my head and come back to it a little bit later. But I've got the pattern down, and actually while we're talking about it, this was something that we didn't talk about last week, was kind of how the game controls. And I do find that, because there's a part, so spoilers if you haven't played the game, when you're at the boss, you get this is it yellow eco that shoots the fireballs?
Yeah.
And you have to aim at a part on the boss and shoot him. And I find that it doesn't matter which way I have the analog sticks, whether I have it inverted or not inverted, just for whatever reason, it doesn't feel right, and I can't quite aim right where I want him to all the time. And I find that frustrating. But we were talking earlier in our chat where we discussed things about how the double jump doesn't really respond the way that we want it, or the way that we feel like it should. And I've just gotten into the habit where if I know I want to double jump, I just
you just gotta tap it.
Yeah, I just mash on the X button as fast as I can and hope that it works. And 98% of the time it does. But then there's that 2% of the time where I'm like, well, I just died because the game didn't do what I told it to.
Yeah, I was fighting that giant in the lava. And I can't tell you how many times I would die and start over and double jump wouldn't work and I would die immediately.
Yeah.
And, come on, just run right into the lava. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
That's exactly what I wanted to do.
But that's not to say the game's bad. I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
Not that so yeah, Halo. It originally came out for the Xbox on November 15th, 2001. And I didn't realize this until I was looking this up, but the 10-year anniversary edition came out exactly 10 years to the day.
Yeah, I was working at Best Buy at the time, I remember.
And that's pretty neat. So November 15th, 2011. And you can, of course, get the game in the Master Chief Collection for Xbox One. That came out on November 11th. 2014, which is still pretty close to
Yeah.
being the exact anniversary of when it came out. So the game's developed by Bungie. They had done a few games before Halo. I think Marathon is probably the most popular one before Halo came out. And actually, I think some people, I guess there's like, what do they call that? Headcanon, where Marathon and Halo kind of exist in the same universe to the fandom, even though that's not really true. They're not in the same universe.
Yeah, that's headcanon.
Right. So, and the publisher is Microsoft Game Studios. And there's a funny story about that. Back before this game came out, this was around the time that Apple had rehired Steve Jobs to come in and kind of save the company. And Halo was a game that Steve Jobs, it was going to be a Mac OS X exclusive, and Jobs believed in it so much that he brought some of the team from Bungie to WWDC, whatever year this was. Maybe it was like 1999 or 2000 or something.
Yeah, it was right around there.
Yeah. And they demo this game, and it gets, huge reception, and it's a really big deal because if you game on a computer, you don't game on a Macintosh. I mean, in today's world, that's changing a lot because Steam is doing a lot to make sure that games are compatible with both Mac OS X and Windows and even Linux to a point.
Yeah.
But back then,
a
big game like this coming out exclusively for Macintosh was huge. And then...
Wait, can you name any big exclusive Mac games?
No.
At the
No,
time,
you can't. Okay.
Spore.
I mean, there are big games on it
think
now,
it's
but they're
supposed to
not
be.
exclusive.
Right. Maybe don't all Macs ship with chess? So,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yeah,
I've never owned one.
I mean, I think at the time, Spore was originally a Mac-only game. Of course, now there's on...
It might have been.
Maybe.
And that's why
Well, yeah,
it
like,
didn't
not
do so
anymore.
well.
Right.
But, yeah.
That's why no one played it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so of course Microsoft is working on this thing called the Xbox at the time, and no one really knew what it was. Sony was hyping up the PlayStation 2 at the time. I think the Dreamcast was already out.
Yeah.
And of course, everyone knew that Nintendo had something coming out, which wound up being the GameCube. And so, Microsoft they're working on this thing, but they haven't really talked about it. And they see this Halo at Apple's event and basically hand Bungie a giant check to make Halo an Xbox exclusive. And the rest is history.
This is the game that sold the Xbox.
Oh, yeah.
Much.
I don't think we would have had an Xbox 360 or an Xbox One if it were not for Halo. Because I knew people with original Xboxes, and they had, Halo and a bunch of other games, but there's a reason why I don't know what the bunch of other games were. Because
Halo
Halo 2, sure. But we played Halo, and it was big because you could LAN party it, which was something that, PC gamers had been doing for years. But this idea of stringing consoles together was weird. What is this? Why does
kids these days don't even know what a LAN party is?
right? Because now you play on the internet. But back then, you look on the back of your console and here's the power cord and here's the AV cable and this. Well, and I guess even the Dreamcast, it had a phone modem port, which that was kind of weird. And you could buy a port for the PS2. I don't think it came shipped with it, right? Yeah, you had to buy it.
Yeah, because it online was.
I'm looking at mine right now
for a while. It's like mid to late through the PS2 system life.
Yeah. Okay. So there's the expansion bay where the hard drive goes, and also the Ethernet port would go there too.
Right. So it wasn't built into it.
Just like the GameCube, not built in.
Yes. And so you get this Xbox and you're like, what is this port on the back? Is that thing that it's a giant phone port? And no, it's so you could connect to the internet when Xbox Live came out, which did not ship day one with the Xbox, and so Halo 1 was not Xbox Live compatible. I think some people made it compatible later.
Yeah.
Like, you could trick your Xbox or Halo into accessing Xbox Live, but it wasn't officially supported. And
oh man, I want to say it was eventually.
Halo 1? Because I was thinking the first time Halo 1 had online support was when it came out for Windows.
You're right. And sorry, I was thinking there was something on the box art that said it was, but it says only on Xbox. It doesn't say Xbox Live.
Right.
That's what I was thinking of. Okay. Yeah. And so you're correct.
Yes. But all the same, this game was huge. It had a huge impact on the industry, and of course we'll talk about that when we get through the list of important people who were involved in it. So me being the kind of person who gets all of my information from Wikipedia, which is a super trusted source that never lies ever about anything. They had no director listed, so we're going to skip over that. But the producer they have is Hamilton Chu. I've never heard of this guy. I'm sure he's probably just big in Bungie. He might even still be with them. While we were talking about Bungie, if for some reason you've been living under a rock for the last 20 years and you don't know Bungie from Halo, you probably know Bungie as the developer of Destiny. Whether you have good feelings about Destiny or bad feelings about it, because I know that game is very divisive. You've got the people who picked it up when it first came out, and then even after The Taken King came out, they just never forgave the fact that it was kind of rushed and there wasn't a whole lot to it. But then you've got the other people who came around after The Taken King, and now they love it and they swear by it, and it's got a big following. But we're not talking about Destiny. That was just, that's might be where you know Bungie from if you don't know them as the people who made Halo. Now, a name I do know is one of these composers, Martin O'Donnell. He came up with the Halo chant, that there. That's all the singing you're going to get out of me.
It was angelic.
Yes. He came up with that, and really most of the soundtrack for the game. I had not heard of this other gentleman, Michael Salvatori, but I did look into him a little bit, and it seems like just like Martin O'Donnell, he's just done a lot of Bungie games. Just maybe he didn't have quite as big a role in the composition as Mr. O'Donnell did, or maybe he just doesn't like being in the spotlight. I don't know. Some people get weird and they don't want their face out there, and that's fine. I can't say that if I were working for a big studio that I wouldn't necessarily want everybody and their mother knowing who I am and stopping me in the shopping line at Target to get an autograph or something weird like that. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that has ever happened to Martin O'Donnell, but maybe, who knows?
It happened to Grant Kirkhope, I'm sure.
Maybe.
Just messing with
you. Maybe. Even though I don't know who he is, it doesn't mean everybody else doesn't. I do know that, because I think I read that Michael Salvatori is still with Bungie. I know that Martin O'Donnell is not. There was a weird falling out between him and Bungie, and it kind of played out a little bit over Twitter. But
was the best spot to have
I know. That's so. And I know Bungie was largely silent on it. It was mostly Martin kind of venting 140 characters at a time. So who knows what really happened there, because we only really have one side of that story. But he's a fantastic composer, and regardless of what happened, I'm sure Bungie is a slightly less cool place to be without him.
Probably.
Yep. So, anyway, you can get this game on Xbox, Windows, Mac OS X, the Halo Combat Evolved Anniversary Edition for Xbox 360, and on the Master Chief Collection for Xbox One. And the version that's on the Master Chief Collection is literally just the Anniversary Edition. There's nothing different about it at all.
I had a question on that, though, because real quick, because I know I didn't play the Anniversary Edition. I know on the Master Chief Collection, when you play the first game, you can switch the graphics between the original Xbox and that was in.
That was in the Anniversary Edition, yeah.
Okay.
And it's really neat because it happens. I mean, they advertise that it happens seamlessly. There is a little bit of like the game will pause for maybe a second.
Doesn't it white out?
Yeah, actually, I think it does. And then
it like whites out and everything goes low res, and then it whites out and everything comes back.
Right.
Yeah.
But it is.
It is. Mine's is pretty instant. It's just like bam, 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 bam.
Yeah, I haven't tried it on Master Chief Collection, so maybe it's faster on there, and that's why.
That could be it then.
But it is as easy as pushing a button. I don't remember which button, but
it's the
select
button, whatever that is on Xbox.
Right. I think
is it called select on that?
I think on the 360 it's called back.
Okay,
and on the Xbox One, it's like share or
that like multiple.
Right. I don't. Even though everybody just calls them start and
select. Yeah. Thanks, Nintendo.
Yeah.
Well, Sony adapted, so yeah.
Yeah. Microsoft just needs to get with it.
Mm-hmm.
I now trying to remember on the original Xbox controller. I know you had start. Was it also a back button or was it select? I think so. Which is weird because I don't ever remember hitting that button to go back for anything. You hit B to go back. That's what you do.
Yeah.
You hit back to pull up the score of the game, but I have no idea why you'd call that the back button. So. Oh well.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it served a larger function at the beginning of the console's life. Just like Select used to select between different options at the beginning of the game. And then people realized that pressing the control pad was a lot faster and easier.
Yeah, and is what most people tried to do the first time anyway, so why not just do it like that? I know we're going to get off on a tangent, but I'm trying to think. After Select stopped doing that, did it do anything?
Select was the actual pause button in The Legend of Zelda and several other games.
Yes.
A lot of other games.
Right.
Start would bring up
hitting start brought up the item menu. Yeah. You're right. Okay. Huh.
So, like, there's the glitch in the first Mega Man game where you can defeat the yellow demon in one shot, where you press both start buttons back and forth after you fire. Or both pause buttons, so start and select over and over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And it'll hit him every time you pause. And so you can take him out.
Which one?
You didn't know about that?
No.
That was a Lekman's weapon, right?
Yeah, you pull out the Lekman, the something shocker, I want to say.
I can't think of what it's called. Yeah, but it's like, and for anyone who's ever played that and had to fight Yellow Devil, you didn't want to at first, but then it just turned into just so much.
I beat Yellow Devil legit because I didn't know that trick, just like Patrick. And then I saw a video of somebody, and I was like, "Are you kidding me? Are you kidding?"
Yeah, I was like, I saw that. I'm like, you know what? Good job, Joel. I remember seeing it on the Let's Play. I'm like,
oh yeah,
you know what? Well done.
Awesome.
I was at that for an hour. I eventually had to use save states.
Yeah, good old save states.
Right.
And how Mega Man is tied to Halo is they're both robot people things.
Right.
That's not even true because John's not a robot. He's just a really buff dude. Shh. Not everyone knows that.
They've been altered from their original forms.
Sure, this is true.
Right.
And Mega Man was not originally a super fighting robot. He was turned into one.
It's true. So that's how they are related to each other.
Okay. They're both blue, right?
If you play Halo multiplayer, some of them are blue.
You're a little bit colorblind.
Others of them are red.
If you're colorblind, then yes.
That's why we have red versus blue, which I didn't even think. We should talk about that, but we'll probably get to that in the third segment. So anyway,
at some point,
back on Halo, going to talk about the presentation, your art direction, your sound design, and all that stuff. The game, I remember it being unique as a first person shooter because all of the first person shooters that had been exposed to prior to this that weren't GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, you were pretty much fighting some kind of weird form of demon Nazi, and it didn't really matter whether you were playing Doom or Quake or Duke Nukem. All of the monsters they were all kind of gross tentacle-y things and just really weird. And so when you get into Halo and you're fighting these aliens, and they look like aliens, but they've got a kind of a more mainstream something
humanoid
something that would be more relatable to your average person. Kind of like how a lot of Star Wars aliens, they're definitely alien looking, but they're not so alien looking that you're just like, I don't even know what I'm looking at, like you would have had in Doom or something.
Yeah, giant floating eyeball with teeth.
And it's like, what? Whose weird nightmare did this come out of? And the most of the aliens and like the elites and the jackals, they just spoke nonsense. You didn't really understand them. I guess occasionally the elites would shout something in English, but for the most part, they were just making noises. The grunts, however, they spoke English, and they were hilarious.
Yes,
because they would they're pansies basically. They're scaredy cats. They're your fodder. They're just there for you to shoot. And I guess if this game kept score, that's what they would be there for you to rack up your score.
Isn't it possible to like just scare them off? Like
a lot of the times,
a lot of times.
Occasionally, you'd get one who just made up his mind that he was going to fight you, but for the most part, they would take off running and screaming, and they'd be warning their friends. Like I think there's a sound bite of one of them yelling like "brother," and like he's warning his brother or something. Which
I mean, the main incentive of killing the grunts is so they don't warn the elites. Yeah.
Right. Or
that headshot. Yay.
Yeah. Well, yeah. If you had the birthday skull.
Yeah.
On and the confetti would go over everywhere. Was that in Halo 1?
I have no idea.
I know it's in Halo 3. That was.
It worked in when I was playing single player on Master Chief. So
Master Chief.
I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I know they went and added a lot of the new stuff. I don't know if it was like that in like the original version. I'll have to look that up sometime. I actually have it. You'd think I could just pop it in and find out. Because it is backwards compatible on your Xbox 360 if you were curious. But yeah, I remember, and I want to say this was in Halo 1, but it might not have come around until Halo 2. Some of the grunts would just activate 2 of their plasma grenades and bump you.
Yes.
Oh, yeah,
that was in this.
Yeah, and I remember the first time that happened, it's like, oh my gosh, this is a suicide bomber.
Yeah.
And even if you managed to kill him before he got to you, his grenades are live. So if you're standing too close, he might still, at the very least, hurt you, even if he doesn't take you out.
Which is the actual threat of a real suicide bomber.
Yeah. And it was pretty great. I remember the first time seeing that and thinking like, it made the AI feel so much smarter and more real. And I'm not even sure that the AI is smarter in this than any other game. It just felt like their behavior was much more realistic. It wasn't just always automatically charge you and try and shoot you. They would take cover. They would warn each other that you were there. They would try and flank you if you were busy, fighting other characters, and it made it. It just felt like the battlefield was so much more alive than in a lot of previous, at least to me, a lot of previous first-person shooters. Anyway, moving on to the sound design. I can remember the sound in this being fantastic.
Yeah.
The guns sound even though none of them. You play a Call of Duty, and I know there are some people you fire a particular gun, and they're like, no, this sounds like that gun when you go to a gun range and fire it. These are all made up guns, but they sound great. They feel great. They look great. You actually feel like you're hurting things when you're like the enemies are responding to the fact that they're being shot.
Yeah, and just like the look and feel and sound of the weapons are like all very solid.
Yes. And unique. When you're playing multiplayer and you hear one, you know what gun it is.
Yeah.
This is the assault rifle. This is the needler. This is the plasma pistol being charged.
That's the rocket launcher.
Right. And they all, and I felt like that was something that some of the newer Halos kind of lost, especially Halo 4. The human weapons kind of all feel the same. You really had to use Promethean weapons in that game to notice any kind of a difference between what you were firing, and that was disappointing. Even though in Halo 4 especially, the sound design in that game is fantastic. But that's probably because I know I'm getting off our subject of Halo 1, but when Bungie left Microsoft and 343 was formed and took over, a lot of those guys, especially in the sound department, came from Retro Studios, which is why that game sounds a whole lot like Metroid Prime. And I think it's better for it. Like, I remember when I was playing it thinking, I feel like I've been here before and I've heard all this stuff before. And then I read online that the lead sound designer was the lead sound designer on Metroid Prime over at Retro Studios. I'm like, oh, that's why.
That would make sense.
Kind of played this game already.
Yeah.
So, now I think the biggest difference in the presentation of this game than really any other first-person shooter that came before it was the plot. It's not just go into a room, kill everything that's in there, move on to the next room, kill everything that's in there. Even though the gameplay mechanic is still kind of like that. You move into an area, you eliminate all the threats, and you move on. And even though there are a few instances where it's not necessary for you to clear the room, in fact, a lot of times you're encouraged not to do that. You're just like, hey, you need to get here as quickly as possible. Yeah. Don't worry about what the enemy's doing. You're not concerned with that. Get from point A to point B. Yeah. But there's a story, and it's a really good story. And I mentioned on the podcast last week, and I think I said also that this might be heresy, but then Joel, who is a big Star Wars fan, backed me up.
Oh, yeah.
That this as a video game it's in the video game world, it is as big and impactful as Star Wars is in the film industry. And that's because the characters are relatable, even though the lead character, Master Chief, he's kind of a blank slate for you to insert yourself onto. As the games have progressed and now we're on Halo 5, he's got more of a personality and he's more fleshed out and as a character. But in the very first Halo, he had very, very few speaking parts. He had a few.
Almost a silent protagonist.
Right.
So you could imprint yourself on him.
Yeah.
I am Master Chief.
And that was really great. And now, because of that, you're taking orders a lot and not making a whole ton of your own decisions. You're, Sergeant Major Johnson, which that's like the most silly American name that I think they could possibly come up with. He's
when you look at him, I mean, he is stereotypical American.
Oh yeah, and it's great. I'm not complaining. He's awesome. He's got this big old cigar sticking out of his mouth,
mustache, and his rough voice and everything.
And it's awesome. Yes. But yeah, he's barking orders at you, and you basically just have to do what he says, or you're not going to get anywhere.
Pretty much.
But that's fine. It allows them the team at Bungie to really tell a compelling story that even has a twist about halfway through it. You're fighting this race of aliens known as, well, it's not even a race, it's more like a group of aliens called the Covenant, and they're made up of several different races of aliens, and they've come together and formed sort of this religion around the Halo rings, and you think, this is my threat, this is who I'm fighting, and then somewhere around halfway, maybe 2/3 of the way through the game, you realize they're really not your problem. They are a problem.
Yeah, they're not the main one.
Right, but this other entity, and yes, this full spoilers. If you're listening to this podcast, we don't hold much back. So if you don't want to know, stop listening. But I hope you don't stop listening because we like talking to you. But you notice there's the Flood. And the Flood is a race of creatures that they basically just devour everything in their path. They're like, I guess you could compare them to a virus. They consume everything in their way, and then once all the resources have been eaten up, they move on to another place.
Almost like a swarm of locusts.
Right.
Yeah.
And you discover that the Halo rings were built to destroy the Flood by destroying the Flood's food. Well, the Flood's food is everything.
Yeah.
So the Halo rings are basically designed to destroy everything, which will eventually starve out the Flood. Now, I've always thought that was kind of a weird idea. Like, if you're going to die anyway, it was a weird decision made by the Forerunners, who are really only very briefly mentioned in this game. That gets fleshed out in later games. But anyway, the Covenant are convinced that they need to activate the Halo rings, and the Halo rings are going to stop the Flood and make everything better. What the Covenant doesn't realize, or at least not the Covenant army, it's I'd have to research again and refresh myself on the lore. It's possible that the leadership of the Covenant are very aware of what's going to happen, and they just don't care. But the soldiers in the Covenant army, they have no idea what's going on. They just think, oh, we need to activate these Halo rings, and it's going to make everything better. And hence why it's a cult.
Yeah.
So, so by the way...
Blind devotion.
Yes. So by the way, if you're listening to this and somebody's telling you that you need to activate some big ring in the sky, don't do that, because it's going to kill all of us, and it's a bad thing.
Hale-Bopp is not a starship.
Exactly. Right, and before this game came out, like GoldenEye for N64 obviously had a story because it followed the movie. Mm-hmm. And Perfect Dark had something of a story, and it was still pretty thin. But your popular first-person shooters of the time, which were Doom and Quake, it's really... Yeah, it really is just...
Really shallow story.
Yeah, if there's even a story at all.
Technically.
Duke's story is gotta save the babes.
Right.
Like, I'm here to kick butt and chew bubble gum, and I'm all out of gum.
I'm
like,
all out of gum.
Duke's story gets.
You know,
it's that line straight from an action movie.
Now, most of his are, I realized. It's pretty funny.
Hail to the king, baby. That's from Evil Dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
With Ash.
Oh.
And now that I'm thinking about, Doom and Quake and Duke Nukem, it's very possible that of those three games, Duke Nukem has the more fleshed out story.
Yeah.
Because at least Duke is a character with a personality.
A big personality.
Right.
The amazing character of Doom Guy.
Right.
Oh, yeah, right?
Or Quake person.
Played by Dwayne The Rock Johnson.
So that's why this was so big. Was not only was this a competent first-person shooter on a console, right, which is even crazier. But even, again, referencing GoldenEye and Perfect Dark, those were the first times that someone had shown the world, hey, you can put a first-person shooter on a console and it can work.
Because before this, like, the best first-person shooter was Half-Life. And that's a PC exclusive.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, and it came out like in '97, I want to say.
I think so.
Yeah, and so like it took 4 years for consoles to catch up and say, hey, we can present you a, you know, first person shooter with solid mechanics and a good story, just like Half-Life.
Right.
And you can play online with your friends. Well, no, not quite.
Right. Not on Halo. You get in Halo too.
Not on Halo.
Right.
Eventually.
Yeah, and there are still, of course, people who swear by the mouse and keyboard, and you know that's fine.
I'm one of those people. I can't play a first-person shooter on a controller. It's hard for me to just like wrap my mind around the dual sticks and pulling a trigger, and like I need a mouse and keyboard.
Yeah,
that's what I learned on. That's what I'm best at.
Right, and I, having not been a PC player until very recently, when I plug in, when I boot up a PC game that's a first-person shooter, assuming it has Xbox 360 controller support, which most today do, I plug in my 360 controller. And yeah, some people will say, oh, well, your aiming can't be as accurate and you're going to get killed all the time. And I won't even argue with you because you're right. My aiming would be more precise with a mouse, but this is what I like. I still have fun doing it. And so I do it.
And that's the point of games, is to have fun.
Is to have fun. Now, I will say, if I could get, and again, this is off on a tangent, but have any of y'all played Metroid Prime 3 or even Metroid Prime updated for the Wii?
Yes. I have the trilogy for the Wii. I have not gotten to 2 or 3.
Yeah, if I could play every single first person shooter ever like that, I would.
Oh yes.
It's
with a Wii controller?
Yes.
Yes, pointing it at the screens, like you get a feel of actually aiming your weapon. Like it's the best.
And I love that you can move your aiming reticule within your field of view without turning if you want to.
Yep.
You like, oh, hey, there's a thing up here in the top right corner of the screen, but I don't necessarily need to turn my focus to it, so I can just point at it and shoot it. And it's wonderful. If I could play every first-person shooter like that, I absolutely would.
Yeah.
And I remember the first-person shooter that I played on Wii was Call of Duty 3, and they didn't detach the aiming from the look. And so every tiny little twitch of your wrist, the screen is moving, and it was nauseating.
Yeah,
how could you play like that?
I could.
You'd have to hold your arm still, and then you just get tired.
Yeah, I couldn't. I was like, I can't even do this. I'm sure this game is fun, but I can't do this because I'm getting sick of the screen constantly moving. And when Metroid Prime fixed that problem, it was amazing, and it's just really unfortunate that I can't play every game like that. But who knows? Maybe with Oculus Rift and PlayStation VR and all that stuff getting popular, maybe that'll become a thing that we can start doing.
Yeah, we're gonna start carrying around plastic rifles and pointing them at blue screens and
at screens that aren't really there, and
sneaking up on your friends when they have it on. And...
Oh my gosh! Getting on a tangent. Have you seen that video of the guy wearing the Oculus doing the roller coaster? And his friends come up behind him and
oh my gosh,
pull him down, and he like literally goes into a panic attack.
Oh, I bet he did.
So hard.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. It's awful.
Such a jerk move, but oh my gosh, was it funny?
That's hilarious.
Like he was like screaming and crying like in the fetal position. Like,
I bet he was. I bet he had to change his pants later.
I'm sure he did, yeah. Like they eventually had to, pull the thing off his head and show him you're okay. You're not falling off the roller coaster.
Oh my gosh. See, and I don't like roller coasters. I'm very queasy about them, and I'm kind of scared. So that would see, and that seems like the kind of thing like, oh, it's VR. I could do this. And then someone pull me off my chair, I'd have a heart attack. They'd be like, oh my gosh, what is happening?
People would read about it in the newspaper. Local man dies from Oculus.
Yeah.
Heart attack while wearing. When it releases to the public, it's going to happen.
It's for sure.
Absolutely.
Sorry. Wow, big tangent there.
Well, actually, while we're on VR, I think, and we're talking about a first-person shooter, I really think that first-person shooters would benefit a lot from VR. I'm not real sold that VR is going to be the next big thing that changes the gaming industry. Like, like adding a second analog stick to the controller did, or like the Wii did with the Wii remote. But I definitely think the applications are there. They've got to make it affordable, though. When Oculus announced that the Rift was going to cost $600, I was like, "Yep, nope, that's not happening."
That's more than my PlayStation 4.
Right, and then on top of that, you need a computer that at the bare minimum costs like $1,300 just to run it, and that's probably not even running it well. That's just to get it working.
So to play an Oculus Rift, you need a $2,000 investment at minimum.
Basically. And then on top of that, a $60 game is compatible with it.
Yeah.
And it's just
we hope it's only 60.
Right.
Yeah, depending on the game.
Yeah. So I'm really hopeful that that Sony with PlayStation VR will recognize that, hey, we can't expect everybody to buy a $300 game console and then a $700 thing to strap to their face. It's going to have to be more like $300, which even that is like, okay, now it's $600 to use this thing.
How much was the Kinect when it first came out? It's like 150.
Yeah, 150 was the original Kinect.
Yeah, so I think that's as much as people are willing to pay for a peripheral.
Probably.
Like, I want to say that the Power Glove was around the same price point.
Mm-hmm.
No, was it?
That thing was goofy.
Wow.
That thing
and that was in 1989 or whenever it came out.
Right.
So I mean, adjusted for inflation, that's $200 or $300 in today's money.
Mm-hmm.
But,
that's really sad.
It's insane to think about.
Let's talk about Halo.
Yeah. Oh yeah, our sound guy's getting us back on track. So this is Halo related. It's not Combat Evolved, but the Anniversary Edition. It had Kinect support.
Oh, really?
But it only did one thing. You could shout the word grenade, and Master Chief would throw a grenade. But it didn't happen instantaneously because, of course, the Kinect has to hear it, and then it has to send that information to the 360, which then has to figure out what it's hearing, and then do it. But what, of course, this also meant was anyone in the room who just wanted to watch you throw a grenade could yell grenade, and you would do this. And I cannot tell you how many times a friend of mine intentionally got me killed because he's like, hey, grenade. And I'm like, stop that. And I wanted to be like, who at Bungie said, this is a great idea? We should totally do this.
That is a cool idea, but I can see how that's bad news.
Like, no, it didn't work. And it was terrible. And then even if your friend wasn't trying to get you hurt, you could just be talking. And if the word grenade came up, you threw a grenade. Like, this is terrible. And the funny thing is, people complain about the voice recognition on that not working well. It never misunderstood that word. Like, nope. I heard you say grenade. We're gonna chuck a grenade.
Programmed to only understand one word.
It's true. But it was so bad. I could not believe that was a thing that they did, and I'm not sure if they removed that in the Xbox One version on Master Chief Collection. I haven't tried it. I know Microsoft's been kind of distancing themselves lately from Kinect, which is kind of a shame because the new Kinect works really well.
Yeah, I remember the first time I played with Kinect at Best Buy, and I was demoing it for a customer, and if you've ever been to a Best Buy, it's noisy in there.
Yes.
And so I'm talking to the Kinect to get the game to play, and the guy's going, it can hear you over all this noise. Just going, yeah, do it all the time.
Yeah. It was really, really, really neat. Anyway, okay, so cultural impact of this game. I mentioned briefly that this is the Star Wars of video games. It's that big. Before this game came out, the big popular kinds of games I guess we're kind of still those mascot platformers.
Yeah.
Your Mario 64,
like
Jak and Daxter, like Banjo-Kazooie. And then Halo came out, and now it's Call of Duty. Medal of Honor was around for a little while. Battlefield is big. Battlefront. Gears of War, which Battlefront, well, I guess Battlefront you can go into first person. And then Gears of War is a third person game, but if you shove the camera inside Marcus Phoenix's head, and it's the same thing, it's just where the camera is.
Like you don't even really notice the characters there. You're looking at the reticle.
Right. That's how that works. And all these games, you've got Homefront and of course Half-Life, and Half-Life was already a thing before Halo, but it was big on PC.
Yeah.
And I really think it was because of Halo that Half-Life was able to become as big as it is, and now it's so big that the fact that they haven't finished the story makes people crazy. And
Illuminati confirmed.
Right. So if someone's listening to this, he mentioned Half-Life 3, it's coming out. No, I have no insight into this, right?
It'll never happen. Gaben has spoken.
Yes, I am not secretly Gabe telling you that this game's coming out. It's
my brother's name, Gabe.
Oh, yeah?
So, every time I hear people talking about Gabe Newell, I'm just like, and they speak of Gabe, I'm just like, wait.
See, I always, when I hear Gabe, because I read the Penny Arcade webcomic, Gabe is one of the characters on that, and so that's who I think of as Gabe and Tycho. This is kind of relevant because it's about the Xbox. There's a Penny Arcade comic where, the original Xbox controller was like a giant potato.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Dude. That hurt. I legit didn't like it. My friend had it. I'm like, this is the worst controller ever.
Yeah. I don't remember if I ever played with that controller or not.
Yeah, I did. And I remember not hating it nearly as bad as my friends did. But it was certainly like, I can't believe somebody designed this and like focus tested this and decided to go with it. This is crazy. But anyway, there's a Penny Arcade comic where now I'm gonna forget which one it is. Tycho, I think, is the one that wears the yellow shirt. He's sitting on the couch, and in like narration bubbles, it says, "We swapped out Tycho's Xbox controller with a grizzly bear to see if he would notice." And he's got his arms wrapped around this grizzly bear, and this bear just looks kind of scared and confused, like, what's happening?
Happening?
And Tycho's going, something's different about this controller. Did you shrink it? What happened?
Oh, man. Well, like, because the thing is huge. It weighs like 2 pounds.
Yeah. My Super Nintendo doesn't weigh as much as that. With a game in it. But anyway, it was big because it had the second analog stick on it, which the original PlayStation had the very first DualShock. And so that was the first controller that had two stick that I know of.
Launched, it did not have analog sticks.
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, it was just regular. And that thing, because there were no analog sticks, I remember picking that thing up, and it weighed nothing.
It was.
I was almost afraid I was gonna break it.
It didn't even have the vibration in it.
Right.
Yeah.
Because Nintendo kind of made that popular with the Rumble Pack.
The Rumble Pack.
That added on, and I actually got to where I was just used to the weight of that thing being there, that even if my Rumble Pack doesn't have batteries in it, I have to have it there, or the controller feels weird.
My Rumble Packs all broke.
Yeah.
And so for the last year, I've been playing without them, and I finally got a new one, and it feels so nice to have it again.
Yeah.
It's like, this is what an N64 controller feels like.
Exactly. But Sony added the analog sticks to the PlayStation controller, not for first-person shooters or any kind of camera control. It was actually because the developer of Gran Turismo wanted analog control for the gas and the brake.
Yeah.
At the time, the L&R triggers were still kind of just buttons.
They were in PS2 also.
Yeah, and they were pressure sensitive, but not not like we think of them today as triggers. That was also something that didn't come around until the very first. Oh, actually, no, I take that
PlayStation
back.
3,
The
Xbox 360.
well, the
Oh, the Dreamcast.
yeah, the Dreamcast had
Right.
analog triggers on it. But yeah, so anyway, the PlayStation controller, it was the analog sticks were there so that you could have analog control of your gas and brake. So up on the right stick was gas, down on it was brake, and then of course the left stick was your steering. Which I guess that's kind of how first person shooters control your right stick, unless you're playing Southpaw. Or is Southpaw? Is that where the? That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Are you talking about inverted?
No. Because there's
Oh yeah.
there's an analog configuration that feels more like GoldenEye, where your left stick does all of your look, and then the C buttons are strafe and move forward and back. Because when you're playing Halo, your right stick moves you forward and back, but it turrets you left and right. You strafe with the.
I think you got it backwards.
Do I have it backwards?
Yeah, you press forward on the left stick and you move forward, and you strafe left and right with the left stick.
Yeah. You're right.
But you look around with the right stick.
Yeah. Is this LG, OG Xbox had triggers, but no shoulder buttons?
That's right.
That's right. Yeah, because it had those black and white.
It's supposed to be like programmable buttons.
Yeah. Thank you, LJ. That's our sound guy, who I'm sure I've introduced you guys to him before. He's doing a little fact checking for us, and trying to keep us on topic when we start talking about things that are not Halo and our Halo podcast.
We're getting that Gug Life.
Trying.
That's right. So this was big. You got the analog sticks. Oh, and also the Xbox's analog sticks are staggered, and
yes,
not I prefer that a lot.
Me.
The PlayStation controller feels strange having both of my thumbs.
Yeah, hold on, I want to turn on my camera for a second for you guys. So here's my Xbox 360 controller, right? Okay, here's my Wii U controller with the offset sticks. Okay, and here's my PlayStation 4 controller with offset sticks. Here's the left.
Okay, so you've got some.
Yeah, I've got some third-party controllers because I cannot stand having the sticks next to each other. I had a third-party controller for my PlayStation 2 and 3 that was offset, and it broke. It made me sad, and so I had to go back to the standard PS2 controller for Jak and Daxter.
Yeah. Now I definitely prefer them staggered, but if the controller's going to be symmetrical, I like how Nintendo put both sticks above the buttons instead of below them. If I'm going to have a symmetrical controller, I like that better than the way Sony does it, where the sticks are. And maybe it's just because I've got kind of big hands, but if I'm in a situation where I have to push both sticks in towards each other, my thumbs hit each other.
Oh, really?
And I can't quite get them all the way unless I adjust where my hand is on it. Now, that rarely happens. I don't find myself having to do that very often, but it does happen, and it drives me crazy.
I can see that.
Yeah. So there's that, and that was huge, and so that ushered in all these other first-person shooters. Like, it used to be that a first-person shooter would come to PC, and then maybe it came to console, and now it's kind of the other way around. Games are designed for the console, and then they come out on the PC later. And even if the first-person shooter is on PC, like Call of Duty, PC shooters and console shooters are designed differently because the control schemes are different. Mouse and keyboard kind of lays itself to a different style of play than dual analog sticks do. But even so, playing Call of Duty on a PC it's a console game, and it very much feels like that. Titanfall feels like, to me anyway, it feels like a console game. So there, and that's, if you're a PC Master Race guys, blame Halo. That's Halo's fault. And then that's just how it is. And now, Halo sells millions of copies every time, one comes out. But Call of Duty, I mean, it's kind of died down with more recent games, especially after Ghost was so bad.
People finally started to wake up.
Yeah. But for a while, I mean, Call of Duty, even though a new one came out every single year, it was
dominating.
Right. It was massive. And not just in video games, but these games were making more money than Hollywood blockbusters were making. Big budget.
Black Ops 2 was the fastest entertainment whatever to gross $1 billion.
Yeah. And then I think that probably got overthrown by Grand Theft Auto 5 because I know for a while GTA 5 was breaking records. I don't know, maybe it didn't break that one. But even that game was the original GTAs were associated with PCs. And now they're console games. And in fact, GTA 5 was out on Xbox 360 and PS3 an entire year before it showed up on PC.
Yeah.
And that is largely, I believe, because Halo showed the gaming industry you can make a great PC quality game on a console.
There was a paradigm shift.
Yeah. And that was, and it was huge. It was also very interesting because that console generation, the Xbox, well, I don't know about worldwide. Maybe was it in second place worldwide? Because I know the GameCube didn't. I mean, it didn't do terribly, but it didn't do great either. Obviously, in Japan, the Xbox was a non-factor, and the GameCube outsold it probably, by a long shot. But I don't know about like over here in the States. I mean, I had a GameCube, but I'm a Nintendo guy, and I didn't.
Xbox came in second place. Yeah.
Okay, worldwide. All right, I kind of want
by 2 million.
By 2 million. Oh, that's a close race, at least.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, not considering the PlayStation 2 is 155 million.
Well, right, and it's to this day the best-selling.
Yeah.
Any kind of gaming.
It's the best-selling DVD player of all time.
Yes.
and the PlayStation 3 is the best-selling Blu-ray player of all time.
Yep. Absolutely. There was a little while where the original DS had outsold the PS2, but then I think because Sony,
as far as like monthly sales go, yes.
Yeah. And that was big.
Yeah.
But so I mentioned in one of the podcasts that I had an interesting story about my Xbox 360. And since we were going to talk about Halo, I was like, it was about my gamer tag.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so my gamer tag is Huge Cow Patty. My name is Patrick, and people in college called me Patty. And before the 360 came out, and I had never owned an Xbox product before then, and other than Halo, I didn't really care to own an Xbox product. I was still very firmly in the Nintendo camp. The Wii was what had me excited coming out of the GameCube console generation. And so that's what I was waiting for. But Pepsi, who owns Mountain Dew, through Mountain Dew, did a contest where if you bought a Pepsi 20 ounce or a Mountain Dew 20 ounce, it came with a code under the cap. And they were giving away an Xbox 360 every 10 minutes for like a month or something. And so I figured out if you played the game right, your odds of winning were actually pretty good. Because what you would do is you'd get the code and you go on a website and you could actually pick which 10-minute slot you wanted to put all your codes in. So, and I figure what a lot of people probably did was they went and got a code and then they immediately picked a 10-minute slot and stuck it in there. I bought a whole bunch of 20 ounces. Like I was buying them for my friends and just telling them, hey, you just got to give me your code. That's all. I don't care. I don't need the $1.50 or whatever it was for the drink. Just make sure I get the cap when it's over. And I had like 20 or 30 of these things. And then I picked one 10-minute slot and I put all 30 of them in there. And I did it all at the same time because I wanted it to be so that when someone else got on, they saw this 10-minute slot has 30 caps in it. No, I don't want to put my code in there. I'm going to go put it in something else. And so, honestly, for all I know, I was the only one with caps in that 10-minute slot because I just overwhelmed it. And so I won an Xbox 360 through that.
Nice.
And we actually got it a week before it hit store shelves.
No way.
That was pretty cool. So, and Xbox Live had been completely revamped for the 360, so it wasn't the same Xbox Live as what was on the original Xbox. So, whatever gamer tag you want is available to you. There are no limits here. And so I'm sitting there. I've never made an online ID for anything other than like America Online. Maybe. So I'm like, I don't know what to do.
That's what that stands for. I'm sorry. Hold on.
What?
That's what AOL is.
AOL, yeah, America
Online. No, I didn't know what it stood for.
Gosh, you're so young.
I know I am.
Do you know the AIM stands for AOL Instant Messenger?
Yes, that I know.
Okay.
Yeah, the AOL is like
right. Yes,
wow.
Stands for America.
He just had an epiphany.
Yeah, I know.
It's like, oh my God.
Now I want to know, like, how many people listening to this are like, wait a minute, my world has just been opened up.
Back to your story.
Yeah, so
I'm sorry, I had to interject with that real quick.
That's awesome.
We're learning things about each other.
So anyway, I'm sitting in my apartment with my goofy college roommates, and I'm like, it's got to be something patty, right? And one of them goes, "You should make it cow patty." And I went, "That's kind of funny." But if I'm gonna be, my gamer tag is basically gonna be poop. It's gonna be big poop. So the huge cow patty, and that has followed me around. Like, and there was a time in my life when I was like, I don't really like this anymore, and I'd like to change it. I don't want to be huge cow patty. And on Microsoft, you can pay them like $10 and you can change your gamer tag, and that's not a big deal. But on Sony, there's just no way to do it unless you just want to start over. And I'm like, I'm not starting over because I got all these trophies and all these games that I've bought. And
I say the games,
right? And I don't even know if you can do it on Nintendo's, but that's because as of now, your online ID is still pretty firmly attached to the console that it's a part of.
Yep.
I mean, you can move it if you ask them to, but it's not as easy as just signing into another machine and it working. But then, so I was lamenting that one day in Geeks Under Grace when Anna Zhang came up with the idea of shortening it to HTTP, and I'm like, oh, actually, I kind of like that. That's cool. So I just ran with that. But anyway, that's the story of how I got my first Xbox product. And trust me, even though I got that thing for the cost of like 30 Mountain Dews, I have poured so much money into my Xbox game library. Actually, the Xbox that I have now is my 5th one because of the Red Ring of Death.
Oh, wow.
Now,
yes.
Now, I only had to pay for the very last one because Microsoft covered every single other unit that I had that broke. So the one that I currently have is the only one that I ever actually paid money for. So I count that as a victory. That's a
so your free one died, and then the subsequent 3 others died.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All from Red Ring of Death.
Wow.
Yep.
But the one you have now is holding on.
Yeah, well, the one I have now is not a white console. It's It's
the
like
Elite?
It was the re-release.
The E class or the S class or
whatever you want to call
whatever it is. It's still because the newest one is flat, and this one still kind of has that weird curve in it. Mm-hmm. So it's not the newest model, but the model just before that, and it's been doing well. I've played many hours of Halo, and my son has played many hours of Minecraft on it. It's really holding up.
I will say I remember the first time playing a Halo with you and noticing that you don't have 343 on your name either. Thought that was funny.
My
Jew.
Oh my!
Yeah.
My
that was funny, the funnier one.
Yeah. But so on the original Halo, hey, we're back on topic. What do you know?
Right?
The original Halo, you had, because there weren't gamer tags, like your Xbox Live ID was associated with your console, not with you. So you had profiles within each game, similar to how Nintendo operates today. And so my profile on Halo was always the Jews, because your name, like, I think now it's limited to 4 characters, and back then it was like 8 or 10 or something. And the reason why was because anytime I killed you in the game, it came up in the top right corner of your screen, you were killed by the Jews. I thought that was great. And I'm Jewish, and I'm like, this is great. Well, also, if you killed me,
you killed the
Jews.
Wow.
And so
people feel bad.
And yes, exactly. I'm like, you Nazi. So anyway, I think that's probably all we have to say about Halo. I felt like I did all the talking.
That's okay.
well, confession, I've never played the first Halo.
Oh, okay.
But I have played Halo 2.
Well, there you go.
Speaking of LAN parties, okay, I went to a LAN party. There was a Halo 2 LAN. And so there was like 16 of us all gathered around these 4 TVs and 4 consoles, and I was on the worst team, but it was great.
Yeah. That's what it's all about, having fun.
Yeah.
And my favorite addition in Halo 2 to the Halo franchise, which is not a thing they do anymore, was dual wielding.
Yeah.
Yes.
And there was nothing deadlier than getting 2 needlers.
Yeah.
And just loading somebody up with those things.
That was like the worst. I mean, I'm not particularly good at Halo, but that just I'm like, fine, whatever. I'm just gonna sit here.
And if you have not played Halo, the Needler it's a pink gun, which kind of makes it look less intimidating, but then there's these crystal spikes sticking out of it, and it looks all malicious and stuff. And those spikes fly out of the gun, and they home to a point. Like, they're not always going to hit their target if the target is running really fast, but they do track to a point. And if you get enough of them stuck into your target, they will explode.
And explode.
And it's almost especially if you can get an entire magazine worth of those things into somebody, they're dead. They're not going to live through it. So, I did, while we're talking about health in the game, this was kind of the game, even though there were health packs, this was the game that sort of started the regenerating health, because you had a shield.
Yeah.
Now, I would argue that in this game it makes sense, and in a game like Call of Duty, where you take an entire magazine worth of machine gun rounds and then you hide behind a rock for 5 seconds and you're ready to go. That's kind of weird and ridiculous.
It's modern warfare.
Right.
Yeah.
But in Halo you had a shield, and in later Halo games they dropped the health.
It's just all shield.
It was just all shield, and if you got down to running out of shield, then one shot and you're dead. Yeah. But it really changed the way you played the game, because you weren't, like, in Halo 1, I guess you were still kind of looking for health packs. But in Halo 2, that was the game they eliminated the health, and it wasn't a health pack hunt. If you found yourself in a pickle, then you just went and hid. And I do believe, I know in later Halo games and in Call of Duty and Gears of War and all that stuff, if you're moving, or no, not if you're moving, if you're sprinting, your shield will not regenerate. And I guess that would not have been a factor in Halo 2, because you could not sprint in Halo 2. That came later.
Yeah.
But yeah, see, the cultural impact of Halo knows no bounds. It's huge.
It is.
Yep. So anyway, that's Halo. If you have access to any of the 3 Xbox consoles or a PC, I do believe you can. I think we talked last week. You can still get the PC version of Halo 1 on the Microsoft Store.
Yeah.
To download. It's I believe it was a Games for Windows live game, which I assume they've patched that out of it because that's no longer a thing.
Yeah.
But it's there and it's fun. The multiplayer is great. We didn't talk a whole lot about the multiplayer other than LAN parties, but the multiplayer is fantastic in it. The campaign's fantastic. The story's great. Definitely check it out. Pick it up. If you've got an Xbox One or an Xbox 360, there's the Anniversary Edition. It's a very, very faithful port of the original Xbox game. Oh, and if you get on Master Chief Collection, the multiplayer community is still fairly robust. If you get the Xbox 360 version, it's just the Halo Reach multiplayer tacked onto it, and you're probably not going to have a whole lot of luck finding people still playing that. But this game is much better played on a couch with a bunch of friends.
Mm-hmm.
And even if you've got enough people for a LAN party, that's the way to do it. Anyway, that's Halo. We did decide last week, or maybe even the week before, that we were going to come into the podcast knowing what game we were going to play next. Yeah. And we're kind of rotating. I picked the first game, and then Joel picked, and then Nolan picked, and then I picked Halo. So now we're back to Joel. So, Joel, what are we playing next week?
We're going to be playing one of my favorite games of all time, Super Mario World, for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System.
Yes!
There we go.
Such a good game. If you ask me, it's the best 2D Mario.
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
Mario 3.
We can talk about that next week.
Yeah. Mario 3 is great, but if you think it's better than Mario World, you're wrong. Sorry.
You're wrong. And we'll talk about it why next week.
Yes. So, so play that next week in preparation. You can play it on the Super Nintendo. There's the original game. There was also a version of Super Mario All-Stars that had Mario World in it.
The special one, not the regular one.
Yes. Not the deluxe. The regular All-Stars did not have Mario World in it. Then there's the Game Boy Advance port. I have not played that one, but I would imagine if it's anything like most Super Nintendo to Game Boy Advance games, it's probably the worst version of the game.
It was not great. Yeah, it was...
Because the shoulder buttons made it difficult.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was...
So,
moving on.
Right. So, and then, of course, if you've got a Wii U or a Wii, you can get it on Virtual Console, and that's probably the easiest way to play this. So go pick it up, play it with us, and be prepared to talk about it with us next week.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to do it. LJ's going to play us a little outro music like he always does, because that's how he is. And we will see you guys next week.
Be good, humans.
Bye, everybody.